The unofficial start of college football season for Michigan fans is merely a day away because Big Ten Media Days is coming up starting tomorrow, and we'll have a couple shows from Indianapolis. But before we get to all of that kind of stuff, all the crazy hullabaloo that's set to take place at Lucas Oil Stadium, we're answering your questions on this episode of the Michigan Mailbag right here on Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We are finally doing the mailbag. Back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. We'll talk, I guess, later in the week, potentially about the Connor Stallions documentary on Netflix. Yes, I did know about it. How did I know about it? Well, you'll see when it happens. You'll see when you see it. You might see this face a little bit. And you might, that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. But let's get to your questions. We've got a ton of them. Not that much from our leaders and best. They had like a week to get this going, and they just didn't get going. And apparently I didn't format this correctly. Let's fix that real quick. There's going to be one person in leaders and best in the Victor's Valiant that isn't supposed to be in there, but whatever. We'll deal with that when the time comes. Let's start off with James Crudup at James Crudup 6. If every college coach was available, how many of them would you take right now instead of Sherrone to be the head coach at Michigan? That's really difficult because with Saban gone, I mean, Kirby's the only one that it's kind of like, well, yeah, you take Kirby Smart. He's got 2 championships. He's had his school recruiting at a high level for a long time. He builds his team the way that Michigan would build its team in terms of from the inside out. He's kind of the only one that I would look at and say, like, absolutely, because is there really any other coach out there that it's like, well, duh, you're obviously going to take that guy? Not really. I mean, Ryan Day obviously doesn't do trench warfare, hasn't won a national championship like Jim Harbaugh hadn't even won it as an assistant, as Sherrone Moore has, as one of the architects of the offense, no less. So otherwise, you're looking at like Dan Lanning, who won a championship as an assistant, but not as a head coach, but does seem to have Oregon trending in the right direction. Outside of that, it's like there's not a lot of reigning national champions that are still around in college football. Mac Brown. It's if I think about it, what is it? It's Kirby Smart, Mac Brown, Dabo. Not taking Dabo. So really, it would just be one. It'd be Kirby Smart. Maybe we'll be wrong after this season, but we'll reassess at that point. Josh Barajadicki, predict your headline for an end of season wrap-up article for both football and basketball teams. And he asked, are you picking up College Football 25? I reluctantly dropped $100 on the deluxe edition so that I could talk about it both in print and on this show. But I mean, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's not my style of game, but I mean, it would be something that appealed to me a lot more. I'd say like more when I was like a fan and just was obsessed with all things Michigan football instead of like, I'm still obsessed with college football, obviously, but it's different when it's like your life at every given moment. But as far as headline for the end of the season, that's hard to say because I have no idea how football or basketball is going to go. But I would have like a headline of something because I don't write the the kind of sensational headlines, right? We're a little bit more of like, here's what actually happened, maybe with a little bit of a tease so that you actually open it up and read it, right? But as far as I think Michigan's gonna be better than a lot of people think. I think it's gonna be like a 10-2 type of season. I could see them losing to 2 of the 4 really big teams on their schedule. But so I'll go with I don't have a good clever thing. Just something like close but no cigar, or something like that. Basketball, I think they're also going to be better than a lot of people think. Leaves them in the dust, like Dusty May, going past everybody. May leaves Big Ten in the dust. Could see that. Jonathan Joseph at JJoseph2156. Which commit are you most looking forward to seeing in the maize and blue? If you're talking about this year, it's Jordan Marshall. If you're talking next year, wait on it, because I want to see how they do with Jerome Miles. Andrew Marsh looks like a good one, obviously. I mean, I'm excited about Nate Marshall. Any of those high-end guys, right? Like, those are the ones that, but really it's the skill position types, right? Like, I would really want to see Donovan Johnson, if he's fully healthy, what he's going to end up looking like. Jasper Parker really showed some things in the Rivals camp. I liked the highlights I saw of him, so that would be that. This is going to be the shortest segment one we have ever had on this podcast. Only 4. We've never had, I think, less than 5 since the first mailbag we've ever done. Spencer Whitmore. That's Spencer Whitmore. 3 years from now, who would you bet has had a better period as first-time head coaches? Sherrone or Dusty? Well, Dusty's not a first-time head coach. He's just a new head coach to Michigan. Also, given the states of both programs factor in. Very difficult for me to assess, because this is really Sherrone's first rodeo as a head coach. Dusty's already done it, right? We've already seen Dusty go out there and have some big success as a head coach leading FAU to the Final Four. I think it's a little easier to win in basketball, and especially with the football, you've got a couple football powerhouses joining. I mean, even like USC might not be, they've been perennially back. Then we decided that they were back, even though they never really fully were back. That I think like that still poses issues. Cross-country trips in the middle of the season, that's troubling, right? That takes a lot, right? When it's just like in the middle of the season. Maybe they'll have bye weeks after all of them. I don't know. But I would say it's probably for, Dusty with the experience. I think that he'll have a little bit more luck, because Sherrone's got to build his thing. And that might take, they might be pretty good this year, but then they'll lose a lot, right? And then it might just take a little bit to build it back. You know what I mean? So that would be that. All right, we're going to continue on. We've got so much more. Not quite a record-setting mailbag, but there's a lot. We'll get to those in just a moment. Before we do, I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. And guess what? They're starting over again with Big Ten Media Days. But with the playoffs having wound down and the MLB and not MLB, NHL and NBA, we've got fewer games, and the sports just aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep going with the sports whenever I want. That sounds very weird to keep going with the sports. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every single day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, we are on to the Victor's Valiant. So many questions, as always. Always a very, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Then we sprint it out in the Blue Crew. Jim at Jim in the North, who would you like the quarterback to be? Not necessarily do you think will win it. In my heart of hearts, I'd love Orgy to become a good passer so we can have that crazy mobility in the pocket. And he continues, if last year's backups on the O-line are now the starters, who are the new backups? Will we maintain our line development? I'll get to the first part first, really. I mean, I want it to be Orgy. And here's one thing that I was thinking about, right? Like, no one was talking about Jalen Milroe at this time last year as one of the best quarterbacks, right? He had a limited kind of go in the year before when there was some injury to, I can't remember suddenly who the quarterback was for Alabama 2 years ago. Oh, Bryce Young. There was some injury to Bryce Young, and he was in against Texas A&M. I listened to the game. I didn't watch it, and it just sounded atrocious. It was like every single throw. I don't remember. I was coming back from like Indiana, somewhere around there, I think. Just remember being in the middle of nowhere, and then it's being like, every pass just sounded like it was incomplete, thrown into double coverage, all that stuff. Kind of the same thing to start last year. It felt like, man, what is Alabama doing? And then he rounded into form. So hopefully that's maybe not quite that being the trajectory, but hopefully Alex Orgy at least goes from good to great. So, I mean, it's Orgy for me. As far as the O-line, the backups, that's kind of difficult to really say at this point because we kind of knew the backups were before. And you're going to see some of those guys taking over. I mean, I would be very surprised if the starting lineup isn't isn't Miles Hinton, Josh Preeb. Don't really know at center. Could be Crippen, could be Anderson. And then so whoever is not the starter is the backup all of a sudden. Giovanni Elhadi and Andrew Gentry. Certainly they could change things up, but when you kind of go for the rest, I'd say like I'll go with Raheem as the backup center for right now. I would say Evan Link is probably right there as one of the backups. Without Amir Herring, with him transferring, that kind of throws me for a loop a little bit. So after that, I guess Nathan Afobe. And for now, I would say maybe Tristan Bounds and Jeff Percy as your outside guys. That would be my guess for the current backup situation. But Evan Link could be an outside guy, but they cross-train, as you know. Carter Carlin at Carter Carl 53947. Any update on Connor Sallion's investigation? No, you would hear it here pretty quickly. Here of all places, you would hear it. We'd talk about it immediately. The only thing I have, and again, I got all the guff from MGO blog board posters because I had said the NOA was going to be delivered sometime in a matter of a week or two, and it wasn't. I also shared in an update the next week that they supposedly want to interview one other person. I'll just go ahead and say it because nothing's really stopping me from saying it. I had been told that they, after the date that I was told it was going to be delivered by again, people who were informed by the NCAA indirectly that this was happening. Then they were like, "Oh, we're gonna go interview Denard Robinson in mid-July." So I think that they're still kind of searching, hoping to find something that they hadn't found yet. No, the only real update is the documentary finally being announced by Netflix. So look forward to that. Also continuing, has Michigan been putting more emphasis on NIL since its recent recruiting success? I do believe so. I think that it's still kind of the same idea, right? They're not inducing, they're still trying to be like, here's what you will get, and I think that they're probably doing a little bit to try to try to make that as rock solid as possible. And there's ways you can do that, like they did with Jaden Davis, right? Like, he came on campus. He was only here for like a month, and he all of a sudden is announcing he's got to deal with Brighton Ford. So there's ways to kind of like secure some of those things, find the sponsors and stuff. But I haven't heard a heck of a lot as to how that's worked, and I haven't really asked that question, to be honest. So next time I talk to someone close to the recruiting department, then we'll ask that question for you. Jacob Heminger at Heminger Jacob, not a question, but something I noticed and wanted to point out for those worried about a regression on offense. He posts some of his own tweets here, and it says, anyone worried about a step back on Michigan's offense, just think about this stat based on 24/7 Sports composite rankings. 12 offensive starters, including tight end 2 and wide receiver 3. The 23 offense average grade 0.906, average stars 3.75. 24 offense average composite grade 0.921, so higher there. Average stars 3.6. And remember, Michigan is already has a few proven lower ranked players that are proving to way outplay their recruiting grades. Mainly being Loveland, but so is Preeb, while with Northwestern, and Morgan has clearly shown a high 4-star playmaking ability. He continues, so clearly talent is there, or even potentially better, mainly O-line with 3 top 100 guys, and all Big Ten transfer and high-level center who would have been ranked higher if he was an interior OL rather. But pure centers seem to get held back in rankings for some stupid reason. So there you go. Clark at Blue for Life, 8. How much of a factor do you think it was for Tuttle to miss spring ball with an injury? All we hear about is Orgy, and I thought Warren looked pretty good. Or do you think the coaches already know what they have in Tuttle? I think that they know. I mean, he's been around forever. Not Michigan, but I mean, this is the 7th year of college football. So at this point, you kind of know what you got, even if he wasn't with your team the whole time. They really love Tuttle, right? Like they, like I said, Chris Ballas printed the same exact thing. Can assume they got it from the same person, or everyone's on the same page. Tuttle was behind 2 first-round picks. So there you go. Coach Kovalevsky at Coach_Kovo. Have you heard any reaction from other sports, non-football coaches about how conference trips to the West Coast are going to impact their program? No, because I don't talk to I only talk to football people. Occasionally I used to talk to some basketball people. I'd like talk to Sadi here and there, but really it's football people. Do you see these nationwide conferences being sustainable for non-revenue sports, or will football and maybe men's basketball break off? I think that that's probably likely to happen at some point, because that's a lot of money, especially if you're going to have to start paying players out of the revenue. it's just going to make it really difficult for for volleyball and, wrestling and gymnastics to make these cross-country trips. And especially more so for like USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon than other ways, right? Because they probably are going to have to do a lot more trips overall, I would think. Football, it's like, yeah, you're going to have, I think Michigan will have, every team will have like one cross-country trip a year, and you can kind of get away with that. Places like Oregon, USC, they're going to have more than that. But, DJ N at Maze Rage 86, if you heard anything in regards to Mike Hard, never crossed anything after he left the staff. Didn't know if he was done coaching completely or just taking some time away. Just seems like the latter. Haven't really heard anything, to be honest. Mark Z at Mark Zimke. 2 questions here. Do you know what specifically happens on visits when the staff conducts a workout for recruits? I do not. When they conduct workouts, you assume that they'll put them through drills and stuff like that. But otherwise, as far as like what happens on visit, it kind of depends on the kid, right? Some of them might do like a academic tour. I'm sure a lot of them will do tours of the campus, but like some might do more of an academic tour. Some of them, I was kind of more tuned into that type of stuff back in like 2017. They used to go and sit down with like Sherry Acho and Greg Harden would be a part of things. Greg's still kind of around, but not necessarily in the official capacity. Sherry, I don't believe, is anymore. They kind of tailor make it to what's going to coerce a guy. Number 2, if you were Wink, how much you rely on NFL experience versus the previous 3 years of film to better prepare for the college game? You kind of got to intermix it, right? Like if you're NFL experience, you're going up against higher level guys, especially being with the Ravens, less so with the Giants, right? Like because you know that you're the hunted in that case, and so you kind of have some plans, right? I think it helps probably having gone in practice against Lamar Jackson for dual threats, and helping with the keys. But I think you definitely rely. Oh, there's a spider on the speaker. But I think you rely heavily on also what your guys can and do. So I think that they will certainly, and can't get this. He doesn't want to go. All right, there we go. Little break in the middle of this. Don't want a spider crawling all around the desk here while we're talking. You don't want to know where it ends up. I think that in this case, you rely more on the tape, though, of what you have. Mix that with what you've, keep in mind, this is like his system anyway, right? Like this is the system that he already kind of implemented. So you kind of look at what your predecessors were able to do with the talent you have, and you figure out what else you can do with them in fall camp and kind of go from there. That would be how I would go about it. Jay Ricci at JMish99. Recent articles make it seem like Michigan's NIL program is taking some important new steps, but I don't sense that opinion is unanimous. What's your take and assessment? I'm going to be continuing and wait and see until it really takes off. Continuing, I'm upset Sherrone Moore isn't getting enough respect in these coaches' preseason polls. What's your take on where he ought to rank in the Big Ten and nationally? Much higher, because at least as an interim coach, I understand he wasn't running practice during the week. That was still Jim Harbaugh, but at least like he's shown like the wherewithal to like deviate from like whatever the script was going into a game, Penn State, and Ohio State in particular. But I mean, he's got 2 top 10 wins, right? Like that's on his record, so that's huge for him. So I think that he should be at least ranked in the top 3 or 4 in the conference. I can understand if you want to put like a Lincoln Riley or a Dan Lanning, who's got a little bit more of a track record above him, make him like 5 behind like Franklin and Day and whatever. And then, ahead of some of the others, but I would probably have him somewhere around like number 3 in the conference right now, but I guess we'll see a little bit more there. The Rican Raider, Hamstand 87, what's the biggest change in Michigan recruiting right now? Not much, except for like they've grown the staff, right? Like that's really the biggest change at this point. They've grown the staff, and otherwise they're still kind of getting settled in from everything I've been told. Not normally in our Victor's Valiant, but I put in here because of the erroneous what have you. Jake Bowling at Jake Bowling 0 with all the transfers in the secondary. Who's your starting 5 beside Will Johnson? Do you feel confident they can stand up to Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State? We'll see. Will Johnson, I'm going to go with Amir Hall and the others. No, I'm going to go with Jair Hill on the other side, and Amir Hall will rotate with him quite a bit, I think. And then behind them, Makari Page, Zeke Berry at nickel, and I'll go with Jaden Mangum. But I think you'll see a lot of Wesley Walker as well. You'll see a lot of Ricky Johnson as well. But those would be my starters. Brett Byer 6. Do you know if they plan on using Edwards in a more developed and creative passing route running? I would assume so. They're not going to tell us what their scheme plans are. What would be the volume of ball carries between Mullings and Edwards? I think that would be on a game-by-game basis, right? If Edwards is still like struggling and getting like 2 yards per carry, even though he needs the volume, I could see them pulling the plug and going to Mullings if he's getting like 4 yards a carry. Has Edwards lost any speed with weight gain? I mean, I think inevitably you'll lose a little bit, but he hasn't gained like a ton of weight. And is Michigan leading for Stanford for Andrew Babalola? EJ Holland is reporting it's 50-50. I think that Michigan will land him. He's in my best guess list. So do with that with what you will. That's a little bit of a guess, to be honest. I have not talked to Andrew Babalola. I know the staff feels confident about him, but that only goes so far. I'm not the one at William Cawthorn 9 with 3. If JJ returned from last year's team, what do you think Michigan's odds to win the title would be? Big Ten, probably around 70%. National championship, probably around 25, because it's an expanded playoff. It's hard to really predict that, but I think that they'd fare a lot better in the Big Ten. With all the transfers from rival programs coming in, do you think there's a Trojan horse thing going on here? No, not at all. Not even a little bit. When do you think they'll announce the starting QB? And do you know where Tuttle is in the race? Probably 1A or 1B, and they probably won't announce anything. He'll just he'll start game 1, start game 2. It might not be decided in game 1, to be honest. KB at KB Go Blue. As of now, is Lamar Morgan an upgrade from Steve Clinkscale? The man is recruiting his tail off. Recruiting-wise, maybe. I don't know, though, right? Like, Steve missed out on some big ones, but he was also awesome when it comes to coaching. We got to see once, it's hard to say in the preseason before we've seen anything exactly how good or not good it is. Perry Mitchell 08, that's his is finishing us off. Hey, I keep hearing Clemson and FSU fans say they're going to the Big Ten. But wouldn't the conference rather take Duke, UNC, considering their AAU and would bolster the prowess of basketball? Maybe. I think right now the conference sees dollar signs more so than the AAU, to be honest. And while that would enhance basketball, I think football's king, right? That's just is what it is. All right, we're going to continue on. We've got plenty more. We're going to do Blue Crew. We're going to speed round it here in just a moment. All right, let's finish out with the Blue Crew. Let's go to Athir Kadir. How is it possible Michigan is not going to be a playoff team this year? I don't really understand what you're asking. I think it's certainly possible. But if they lose 4 games, it's going to be difficult. They have a difficult schedule. If this was last year's schedule, it's like, yeah, they're going to be a playoff team, even if they lose to Penn State and Ohio State, if they win the rest convincingly. This year, they've got Texas, USC, Washington, Oregon, Ohio State. And, there's some other teams that might be improved. Indiana could be improved under Kurt Cignetti, right? They've got a lot of transfers. Michigan State, I'm not going to write them off just because looks like they have a talent deficit. We've seen that before, and they've ended up being pretty good, even when you didn't think they were going to be. So it's a tough schedule, much tougher schedule. Luke Baird, at Luke Baird 2016. With the upcoming season approaching, how do you think Wolverines' reloaded offensive line will fare against this tough Big Ten schedule this season? I still think it's at least one of the top 3 offensive lines in the Big Ten, maybe probably quite potentially the best offensive line in the Big Ten. Today is the day at Junk Bar Man. What are the biggest changes you've seen in the program since Moore has taken over that people might not otherwise know about? There's really none. He's in a there's no reason to change things. And he gets asked that question either by us or even at the golf outing. And there's really nothing, right? It's the same program. He's not really making any changes as of yet because he hasn't really had a need to. Gray's analogy at S_D_Brown 1218. Anything new on the catapult investigation? No, it's been dead in the water for a long time. I just don't think that people are following those leads anymore. It's kind of, the more time passes, maybe something will pop up eventually, but at this point, I don't expect much of anything to come from it. I love this name for some reason. It's ridiculous. No offense, but Racist Pancake at Pancake Racist. What percentage chance would you give Orji to finish the season as the starter? 51%, because they might decide to go with Tuttle, who could be a Cade McNamara type guy, right? High floor, low ceiling, instead of lower floor, higher ceiling. So we'll see. Christian H at Great White 85. Name one potential surprise All Big Ten player for 2024. Okay, surprise. So obviously then we're not talking about like the 5 guys that are obvious. Donovan Edwards, Colston Loveland, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson. I'll also eliminate Jayshon Barham out of that. Wouldn't be a surprise if Ernest Hausman got it either. So I'm going to go with Derek Moore. He's not really a big surprise, but I would go with Derek Moore. Giovanni El-Hadi would be my other one that I think would be a very likely all Big Ten player. He's that type of dude. WB Yeats at SGoodspeed19. Is the James Earl Jones voiced intro video going to stay now that Jim has moved on? I hope it stays. It's kind of a thing now with the crowd. I would imagine it will. I don't see any reason why they would remove that. You missed at you_missed_him. Can Rod Moore make it back for Ohio State playoff run? If that's been answered, apologies. Sherrone Moore says that that's the hope and the goal, and he seems to be ahead of schedule. So that probably, but we'll see how effective he is if he is. David J. Ross at David Ux 1014. What are the odds that Clemson and Florida State join the Big Ten? I'll say sub 50%, but it wouldn't surprise me. I don't have a very good, that's way above my pay grade. Michael Ringle at George_Stang. Do you think that Chip Kelly hire was strategic? As in Michigan wins in November, Day gets fired and Kelly takes the head coaching role. No, I don't think that Ryan Day hired his potential replacement. I think Chip Kelly wanted to kind of be out of the head coaching because of everything that's changed. So no, I don't think it is. First thing that came to my mind was this was a contingency plan given Kelly's moderate success as a coach. No, but I do think that like Tim Drevno as an analyst, that's strategic in case Justin Fry screws the pooch with the offensive line again, which I think he probably will, to be honest. Ben Ricketts at RickettsBen92. Which analyst do you feel will have the biggest impact as an assistant position coach? At first, I was going to say I have no answer because it's like hard to really tell with analysts, but I'll go with, it's obviously Kevin Wilkins, but Pernell McPhee as well. Like those two guys come from the NFL. They have NFL experience one way or the other. They're coaching or playing and all of that. Those would be the two guys I have my eyes on. Finishing us out is Denny from Denmark at Denny from DK. Who's the third running back? Ben Hall, Cole Cabana, or Tavier Dunlap? Gun ahead right now, I'd say Ben Hall. Wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season it's Jordan Marshall. We've seen freshman running backs come on strong early. Wouldn't surprise me, even though they don't really need it. But Ben Hall would be the guy I would go with at this juncture. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Wow, we got under 30 minutes. When was the last time that's happened? I don't know. Next time that we speak, it will be from Indianapolis. So we will talk to you then. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.